Welcome to the Innovation Room, the space we explore the application of technology and AI in business, the practical and sometimes philosophical ideas shaping our future.
Innovation in the electrical engineering industry presents unique challenges, especially with the slow adoption of technology in the construction sector. However, strategic innovation is undeniably key to growth and staying competitive. Today, we'll explore Fixatex Limited, a family-run business specializing in social housing in London. Our guest, the chief executive, Rob Candler, since joining in 2010, grown the business from 15 to over 100 employees, while proving that you can keep the core values and embrace technology. Fixatex's recent collaboration with us at Geeks has enabled the business to develop an online booking system that has streamlined operation, improved customer experience in weeks, not months. We'll also discuss the future of electrical engineering industry, exploring how emerging technologies like AI, VR, AR could revolutionize the sector. Rob's insights into the current landscape and future potential of these technologies will be invaluable. His commitment to preserving the family business ethos while driving progress is inspiring. Join us as we explore Rob's journey and the strategic innovation at Fixatex and the exciting future of electrical engineering industry. I'm Lindsay Jessup, CEO of Geeks, and I'm thrilled to have Rob share his story with us in the Innovation Room today. Enjoy. All right, so thank you for joining us in the Innovation Room, Rob.
Thanks for having me.
For our listeners, can you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do at Fixatex?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm chief executive at Fixatex. We're a family-run electrical contracting business. So we were incorporated in 2000. My dad started it. He's semi three-quarters retired now, maybe more towards three-quarters. I don't think he'd mind me saying that. And yeah, I came into the business around 2010, I think it was. I came into the business. Straight away got all my qualifications. So I became a qualified engineer straight away. It was part of the rules of coming to work for the business at that point. And then literally as soon as I got qualified, I kind of just came straight into running the business. I kind of wanted to learn how to run it, learn from my dad. And then, yeah, at that point, I think we probably had around 10, 15 staff at that point. And then fast forward to probably around 2019, 2020, I became CEO at that point. And yeah, fast forward to today, and we've got over 100 staff, probably around 105, massively grown quite quickly in the space of the last sort of 5-6 years. And yeah, we're like I said, we're an electrical contractor. We mainly focus on social housing in London. Yeah, we're trying to grow, but we're trying to keep that sort of that family business side of it, which is tricky when you've got more people. But I think we're doing an okay job. So yeah.
Oh, I really like that story, and I really like that introduction because a lot of the businesses in the UK are those ambitious family-owned businesses that as you grow, keeping that culture is there's many interesting business cases about that. That resonates with me personally. I don't know if I've mentioned this to you, but my father actually in Canada has his own plumbing and mechanicals business.
Okay. Yeah.
And your story resonated with me because I've joked with my father for years about going and getting my tickets and joining the family business, but I think tech was just calling me too much, and I'm not sure if I would be as fair of a plumber as I am as a technologist. So, but that's a story for another day. So, one of the icebreakers that we love to talk about in the innovation room is who would you, if you're innovating or doing a creative project in your innovation room, who would you like to bring in there with you? It could be anyone alive or not, real or fictional. Who would you bring in for that innovation?
I would. It's probably quite controversial because I suppose he's a bit Marmite. But I'd probably say Elon Musk. Yeah, I just think a lot of people that know me are probably going to be laughing if they're listening to this because I drive a Tesla as well, so it's probably quite typical. But I just think for what he's created and the scale that he's created it at, I think he's extremely impressive. So yeah, if I wanted to pick someone's brains for an hour, it'd probably be his.
Yeah. Well, there's absolutely no doubt that he is one of the best innovators of our time. So I think we'd be hard pressed to find anyone that could argue that. So I think
Like I said,
that's a fair shout.
he's not everyone's cup of tea.
No, I think if you
But
get into the moral enforcer side, that's a completely different
yeah, yeah,
different conversation. But innovation, that one's
yeah.
hard to dispute. Um, so if you're okay, tell us more about your industry and the importance of technology in the electrical engineering sector and construction.
Okay, so yeah, like I said, we specialize really in. I suppose when we in construction, we're a very sort of small part of construction as a whole. We're not I suppose your stereotypical contractor on a building site. We're probably more classed as a specialist contractor.
Mm,
Our focus is social housing, so we do a lot of servicing and maintaining existing installations and period properties. A lot of the stock that we look after is like I said, is period properties in London, um, and a lot of our work is evolved around sort of statutory compliance of big landlords. So a lot of the fire alarm servicing, electrical testing, emergency lighting, all those sort of things that landlords have to do. Um, that's kind of our speciality. It's kind of what we focus on really. We have had discussions around sort of broadening our services and our scope, but we very much kind of know what we're good at, and
mm.
we've kind of doubled down on that. So that's the kind of the sector that we work in,
And how much is
and
technology impacting that?
I think it's I think it's quite it's getting there. It still feels quite slow.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like we're doing probably more than others, but it still feels quite slow.
Mm,
Um, some of our clients, we kind of propose certain things or suggest certain ways of working, and they're kind of just not there yet.
mm,
And it might be quite well in today's world, it's sort of quite basic stuff. Um, so I think yeah, I think it's quite slow, but we're trying to utilize it as best we can. Like we've obviously started working with Geeks recently,
mm,
to try and help our processes and become a bit more efficient. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I think it's a little way behind.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because we had a good conversation in our roundtable yesterday,
Yeah,
actually, didn't we, about the
yeah,
construction industry generally as a whole and how it tends to be a little bit of a laggard in the adoption of technology in a lot of spaces. But that's one of the reasons why. I think your story is great to have you on here with us today because and we haven't discussed this yet, but what I would love to do is have you on the podcast in 6, 12 months time and actually reflect
yeah,
on this and see,
yeah,
because I think it would be really great for businesses in your industry and others to learn from how you go on this journey. It's not just about the destination, but it's
yeah,
how
yeah,
you get
yeah,
there.
yeah.
um so what part of your business in particular do you think is more open to adopting technology and why?
I think it'd be more the administration side of things, the back office side of things. I think could be proven wrong in a few years' time, but I think we're a long way off replacing uh, a human going into a property and
Mm,
checking the electrics. Um, but yeah, I'd say the administration side of things. There's an awful lot of repetitive tasks, time consuming sort of document control.
mm,
I think that's where we could probably have the biggest gains. Um, yeah, I'll definitely say that area.
yeah. And what are the more structural challenges and limitations of the adoptions of new technologies in your industry are you experiencing? So you mentioned like going to site and things like that. What other sort of structural limitations do you see?
Um, General attitude towards change
Mm.
is quite a challenging. We it seems like kind of regardless of whether it's technology or process, I think people are quite adverse against change
Mm-hmm.
in general. Not many people seem to like it,
Yeah.
and especially when it's sort of, I think especially when it could potentially be a change that is taking away something from them. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be a huge challenge. I think, and also again we touched on it yesterday, but I think the
Mm-hmm.
financial element of it is potentially going to be a challenge as well. Hopefully, over the course of the next few years, that the potential cost is gonna come down,
Yeah.
of sort of implementing new technology. But yeah, I'd say those two things probably.
Yeah. And you actually just touched on it a bit, and it's really interesting that you say the change management and the cultural aspects. Because that's absolutely a theme. I think on every person that I've hosted, there's some form of saying the
No one likes
technology is
change.
almost the easy bit. Yeah, the bringing
Yeah,
your team along the journey is the hard bit.
yeah, it's
And
getting people to buy in.
And arguably, it's more challenging than ever, isn't it? Because the pace at which things are changing is increasing exponentially, and having taking the time to empathize, understand where the team's at, and bring them on the journey is something that is both emotionally and physically an investment that leaders need to make in their team, right? So it's
Yeah,
something that is not always budgeted for in
yeah.
that respect as well. So what kind of cultural resistance do you see generally in the industry beyond change? Is there something specific in your specialist engineering services or generally in construction that you would see that's a bit different in your industry perhaps compared to others?
I would say maybe the other thing is maybe age demographic. It's in terms of an industry, it's quite an aging industry. It's tough getting sort of young people to want to take on a trade, and obviously an older demographic, they're less likely to want to take on new technologies, and
Mm,
maybe slower to pick them up as well. So there's those couple of challenges I think as well that are gonna come into play with, and I think that's probably across the board in construction. It definitely applies to probably our sector, but I would say across the board, that's going to be that's going to probably be a challenge. I would have thought.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We'll get into talking more about the future of the industry with technology and stuff a bit later in this conversation. But just while you mentioned that, I'm not sure if you've listened to any of our other podcasts, but we have a guest sometimes called Roger Martin Fegg. I'm not sure if you've heard of him, but
No.
he's a behavioral economist. And he presents lots of interesting insights on what's happening in the economics of the UK and globally.
Okay. Yeah.
And one of the interesting insights that he's had for the last few years, really, is just looking at pure population data and productivity data. So, one thing that he's a huge advocate about, and that's why we're so lucky that he comes on the innovation room often with us, is because he speaks about how important productivity and these industries that will be impacted by retirement and things that are upcoming in any industry that has an aging demographic.
Yeah.
It's going to be one of the key savers of the productivity challenge that we'll start seeing. But interesting, I didn't know in particular that there was also a challenge to entice the younger demographic to get into the
Yeah.
trade. So that could be an interesting one to think about, like how technology could play a part in attracting that kind of talent as well, um,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah. No, it's
interesting.
definitely. We're actually working. We're sponsoring a project at the moment called Building Skills for the Future, and it's working alongside some of the largest housing associations in London, and it's looking at what the requirements are of these housing associations are going to be over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, where
Mm,
the skill gaps are. And yeah, it's sort of it's highlighting that there is definitely going to be a gap, where a massive group of the demographic starts to retire out of the construction industry, and then there's not enough
Mm,
young guys coming through, or girls, and it's definitely a problem,
yeah,
and it's trying to look at that and find ways of attracting more people to the industry.
yeah. And also, the flip side of that is, and one of the things, and this isn't a sector specific challenge, but it's something that we do with many of our clients in the industry, um, is think about what happens when you lose that knowledge. So how are you structuring your data now? So this is
Mm,
where even something simple as in the perfect world, you have systems and controls in place that sort of embeds knowledge into processes and things like that. But as a minimum, if they're documented in documents and things, you can use that in the future to do interesting evolutions with technology. But I think one of the things that for many businesses, but I would wager a lot in construction, probably lack some of the fundamental documentation. Not saying this is the case for you in particular, but I could see a big challenge in a lot of the skills and experience and things that people don't even they do so naturally that they haven't even thought
yeah,
to put down into a process or
yeah,
um,
yeah,
will be lost as these generations move on. So there's huge opportunities for training systems for just embedding things in processes. I think that's probably a really interesting one for a lot of businesses. Do you
yeah,
see that at all
definitely.
now, or?
A little bit, a little bit. Again, I think that was spoken about yesterday, wasn't it? Around
Mm,
documenting certain processes and being able to action the data that you've gathered, and it not
mm,
just sort of sitting somewhere and doing nothing.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think there's a lot of potential there.
Mm. And so, one of the things that I thought would be great to explore today is how you've identified, if you can walk us through a bit of a case study. So, how you've identified a specific challenge or opportunity in the business and how you solve that problem with technology.
Okay, sure. So yeah, we've had sort of, I suppose, the project that we've worked on with you guys. Um, that was all around creating an online booking system. So a large portion of our business, the main sort of portion of our revenue, comes from EICR programs, which is electrical installation condition reports. Basically, going into a property, testing the electrical installation, and making sure it's safe and up to the specification of the client. And we have a team in our office that phones the residents of these properties and books an appointment for our engineers to go and visit. And as sort of we've grown and we've taken on more of these contracts, it was it was just becoming more and more difficult to deal with the volume. And we obviously have a team in the office that's working to standard working hours, 8 till 5, and they're trying to phone residents that are also working 8 till 5,
Mm,
not being able to be contacted, could only book appointments during certain times. And we were just sort of, it was just becoming more and more hard work to keep up with the volume that we needed to book. So we contacted you guys and said, what can we do? Can we build an online booking system that effectively allows the residents to go on and book an appointment at their convenience, a time and date of their convenience? And we created it within a few weeks. We integrated it with our job management system, OneServe, and yeah, it's kind of solved the problem.
yeah.
we've got we've got residents booking at sort of all hours of the day. Um, they're able to reschedule when they want. It's massively helped, and yeah, it was a case of sort of having the idea of how do we get around it, and then getting yourselves and OneServe in a room and saying how do we make this happen. And
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's going really well. We're really pleased with it.
I think what I really like about that example in particular, is you highlighted a very real challenge, but also a very real opportunity. And what I like about that is not only does it bring operational efficiency and productivity gains, but also a better client experience because they can serve themselves in the times that suit them and
Yeah,
things like that.
yeah. I think people like talking to people less and less
Mhm.
these days,
Yeah.
and they don't want to, they don't want to pick up the phone to a number that they don't recognise, and they don't want to speak to someone that they don't know. And if you've got the opportunity to book dinner or book a train or book a cab or whatever it may be, you just want to do it on your phone without speaking to someone. So,
It's
so
really,
it
really
sounds bad,
true.
but it's true.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, we've kind of taken that, I suppose, anxiety maybe of having to deal with someone that you don't know who it is. We've taken that away from people, and they can just go on and book the appointment on their phone with in under a minute with a few clicks. So
Yeah. I think that's such an amazing example, because it's really interesting, because and I think it goes back to that change piece. But often when we're solution designing with clients, um, and actually I'm going to be doing a webinar on AI opportunities that make your customer experience more human. Um, but a lot of people are worried about how bringing in technology or AI takes away that human touch. But
yeah,
actually,
yeah,
I think it gives you opportunities to add more human touch. It's about understanding what is important to the customer. And don't get me wrong, there's many examples where customers do want to talk to people. But I
yeah,
think people don't understand, or don't always um, see how people have moved on. As you said, a lot of people prefer, as a first course of action, to not have to spend extra time or take calls or all of those things that make people a little bit uncomfortable now. Whether that's
yeah,
wrong or right, it's just kind
yeah,
of a
yeah,
societal norm. It's accepted.
yeah,
So it has moved on, but I think people, in some ways, do like to hold on to the let's pick up the phone and have a conversation, which is still
yeah.
great, but and has a
Don't get me
place.
wrong.
But
We still get the odd resident ringing up and going, "Oh, I don't want to use that online. I'd rather talk to
yeah,
someone." And it's fine.
of
It's
course.
absolutely fine. We've got a team there that will happily pick up the phone and speak to residents all day long. It's no problem at all. But
Yeah.
it's just good to have the two options. Um,
Exactly. And
yeah,
then it's a better customer experience, and probably you just look at volumes, right? In terms of
yeah.
where it's a volume. So what would you say then, in terms of do you have any like positive outcome stories? So how has that transformed your day to day? How much do you think there's I don't know if you'd measure it by number of bookings or time it's saving from your team, or how do you measure success for that example?
It's quite hard to say because it's very early. We've only been live
Mm-hmm.
2 or 3 weeks now,
Mm-hmm.
so we don't have bundles of data as a comparison.
Mm-hmm.
We've had over 100 bookings, um, which probably equates to a couple of days, I would say, of
Mm,
time for
mhm,
someone in the office to make those bookings in like over the phone.
mm,
So it's 100% working. It's 100% saving time in the office, but it's quite early for us to kind of decide, right, we've got this much extra time now over the next 6 months.
yeah,
Where do we reallocate that
yeah,
resource, or how do we sort of use that time to be more efficient elsewhere in the business?
yeah.
So it's still quite early days, but it's from what we've seen so far, it's 100% doing what it was designed to do.
Good. What
It's good
also
news
the
for
other
you as well.
yeah, yeah. Otherwise this conversation would have got a bit awkward. Um but the other thing that I think is really cool about this example is a lot of people, when they're hesitant about picking up a business case, there in terms of moving it forward, is I think everyone thinks things need to be bigger or more complex than they are. So if you get into the booking system and the logistics and integrating with two parties and all of those things and the costs and the maintenance and things, it actually can feel daunting to some people. But
Yeah.
actually, if you put the right people in a room and you're very honest, okay, this budget, I think
Yeah, I
it
think
was
that's the
weeks.
conversation we had, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Right at the beginning, it was kind of, let's keep this as simple as possible. This is the
100%.
budget. Yeah, let's go, kind of thing. And yeah, I completely agree. It didn't need to be any more complicated than
Mm-hmm.
someone being able to scan a QR code, put in a
Mm-hmm.
reference, and pick a date and time. It didn't
Yeah.
have to be any more complicated than that, really.
And what I love about that is you turned a business case and a problem into a technical solution that has brought operational efficiency, improved client experience. From what you can tell, it's still early days, but in the span of weeks.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
a lot of
Yeah.
people just assume these projects take months and months. That's not the case. So I think that
No,
that's a
not at all.
really cool story. And I hope you don't mind me sharing. You also had a new bundle of joy come while you were doing that. So a little bit of light work. You're managing a new tech rollout and having a
Yeah.
new little one. So
Yeah,
you can do it all.
I remember Megan on your team reached out to me one day and was like, "Oh, can you do a meeting for like solution design or something like that?" I was like, "No, I can't. My wife's giving birth that day, so I can't do it."
Schedule it
So
after.
yeah, we'll have to do it after. So yeah,
You're,
it was a
you
busy
guys
couple of
were
weeks.
you're absolutely impressive on that one for sure. Um, so what do you think the next big thing would be for from a technology point of view for Fixatex if you have no limitations, some of the constraints you were talking about, take away the change or the budgets and things like that.
Yeah.
What do you think the next big thing would be for Fixatex?
I think I've still kind of got. Again, I know we've spoken with you guys before around certification software,
Mhm.
and because we've always used, ever since we've started doing this work, we've always used off-the-shelf products that have done the job to date. But I think there's so much scope to have a better product that's more suited to our business, maybe with the use of some AI in there.
Mm.
How that looks, how that works, I don't really know yet. But I think it's such a big part of our business and takes up such a huge amount of time handling certification, sending it to
Mm.
clients, quality checking it. That there's so many man hours involved in just certification across the business, just because of the sector of work that we're in. Um, I think that is probably the area that I would love to
Mm.
see us start going into. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it might be one for the next year or so.
It's yeah, that's a really exciting space. What one of the things that we touched on it a little bit before and yesterday in the construction industry and AI outlook. Um, but one of the nice things when you're implementing technology is obviously being clear on the challenge and the opportunity that you're solving, but also what is the bigger vision and mission for the business.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
um, with when businesses are growing and scaling in the way that you guys have been, whether that's organic or whether it's a little bit of a bigger boom, if you will.
yeah,
um,
yeah,
it's always good to understand what does the role of asset creation and IP creation have in a business and exploring that more. So I think
yeah,
that sounds really interesting
yeah,
for Fixatex. So, moving more into as we're starting to go into the forward thinking space, getting into the future of construction a bit more, considering all of the merging technologies that we see out there. So, you have everything from VR and AR and metaverse and AI, and you have all of these applications of, we talked yesterday about robotics and drones and well, you name it, there's loads of examples. You have things like when you implement things like chatbots and customer data, you have sentiment analysis, you have all of these things. So considering all of these different technologies, some more emerging than others, um,
yeah.
what do you think are some potential future outlooks for your specialist engineering sector?
I think, again, going back to the sort of point earlier around, we're not kind of when someone says construction, they normally think of like a building site. That's kind of not really us. So stuff like using drones to survey sites and that sort of thing is not really going to be that applicable to us.
Mm-hmm.
I think where it could have a positive impact is potentially around training and
Mm-hmm.
um, using things like the metaverse and stuff like that to create better training, more realistic training.
Mm-hmm.
I can see some potential in that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Again, how and when we can start getting into those spaces, I have no idea sitting here today.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I would say, knowing sort of our sector and our industry, I'd say training. There's quite a lot of
Mm.
potential there. I would have thought.
And do you think these emerging technologies for training would like enable? So, what kind of scenarios do you think that you'd like to see enabled in training? Like, what are the more common specialist things that
Well,
you think would
we're
be
sort
cool
of,
to explore?
yeah, we're what we're finding is we're getting a lot of people come out of college qualified,
Mm-hmm.
but with very very little experience on site actually doing the work.
Mm.
So I think if there could be if we could use things like metaverse, AI, etc., to create much more real life scenarios during training, I
Mm.
think you could end up getting a much better all rounded engineer as they leave college. Because we're getting, like I said, we're getting people turn up on their first day and they're qualified, they have all the certification, they have the paperwork, but they've they've not spent a single day on site.
Mm.
They've spent all their whole sort of their short-lived electrical career in a college,
Mm-hmm.
working in controlled environments with extremely limited scope to what they've done.
Mm.
So I think that is where you'd see potentially a big benefit. Where if you have people coming out of college that have actually, again, it wouldn't be. It's obviously not exactly the same as being there in real life,
Mm.
but it would be a nice stopgap where they've actually seen some more real life scenarios and worked on some
Yeah.
more real life installations. I think that's where there could be potential there.
Ah, I think that's really cool. And what is your feeling about AI generally? So, what is your sentiment? So, I know we've had lots of conversations.
Yeah,
How do you feel? Skeptical, excited, curious,
can I
frustrated?
say all three?
Yeah, you can
Yeah,
elaborate.
I'd probably say all three. I suppose I think you touched on it earlier. Skeptical, probably on the side of like we're very very personal in terms of the service that we provide.
Mm,
Like our brand is, you can, any sort of, from chairman to myself to chief operating officer, all the way down to sort of any managerial level, we're all contactable whenever we get involved in day-to-day tasks that
mm,
maybe in your more sort of corporate environment, those sort
mhm,
of people wouldn't get involved. We're still very much hands-on. We still like to, we call all, like, we're always in contact with our clients. We deliver a very very sort of personal service, and we wouldn't
mm,
want, I suppose, from a skeptical point of view, wouldn't want that to sort of go away, because
mm,
it's part of our brand, it's part of what we do. But I'm always kind of, as you know, I'm always open to ways of making the business more efficient,
mm,
ways of improving what we do. So I'm excited to see where it goes. It's just a case for us, like I said yesterday, there seems to be a lot of talk about it, but no one really kind of knows where to start.
mm.
Um, but at the same time, you don't want to get left behind
Yeah.
because there's going to be people that are kind of right on top of it, straight out of the gate, kind of adopting it straight away. So it's it's going to be a balance for us over the next few years, I think, to kind of just stay on top of it. Very very curious about what how it can help our business.
Mm.
Um, so
It's
yeah,
really
I'm open
interesting.
minded.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you say the skeptical side, because I completely, and you're not the only one that feels that way. And I think that's why, you know how we have we briefly talked about our Daredevil's eye in terms of looking at the whole landscape and going through that process to work out
Yeah,
what are the expectations, but then at the heart of it, what is innately human in a business, and how do
yeah,
you protect and preserve that as your culture or your special sauce or whatever it is that people say, because I
yeah,
actually think that when people focus on that, that's the biggest power that they can unlock when they go through the where to start pieces and they start on that journey. Because when you really know what makes you guys special in your personal touch and your human touch, there's a huge opportunity with AI to be even more personalized, even more tailored. There's so much data and information available to deliver even
yeah,
better and free up more time to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
spending more
yeah,
time with them. So I completely get that, because I'm not naive, and I think anyone would be lying if they were saying that the a lot of roles will not look the same in the future. Augmenting
yeah,
teams with AI is going to change the nature of roles and skills in every industry, including ours. But if you're very intentional about what is the role of human, you can clearly tell I'm a big optimist. So I'm playing the devil's advocate to your
yeah,
point.
100%. Yeah,
But I think that's super powerful, because if you know those things and face them head on, that's how you make the change, isn't it? By
yeah,
understanding and empathizing that every business and every organization is going to have those fears and challenges, and it's just about, getting underpinning them and then building the security for people and customers on that
yeah,
journey.
yeah.
So what examples have you seen, if any, with yourselves or any clients or partners, of uses of AI right now?
I don't actually think I've seen any.
Yeah. The
Um,
the main ones I've personally interacted with are more pretty bog standard, like chatbots and things I do see on a lot of sites for people, but
yeah.
I'm
Again, I don't know, because we wouldn't be on that side of things for our clients. They might have those sort of things in place. So I'm not 100% sure, but from a relationship between sort of us as a contractor and
mm,
our clients, yeah, it's very, 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 very minimal currently.
mm,
Um, but I do get the sense of, as soon as people start to sort of dip their toe in the water, I suppose, to a
mm,
degree, then it will sort of have a snowball effect, and all of a sudden it
mm.
will just be, everyone will be using it, and it
Yeah.
will kind of go that way.
Have
But
you
yeah,
in the wave, because actually yesterday it was, one of the guys in the roundtable was saying how they're starting to see, on sites and different jobs, people are talking more about, since the launch of generative AI and open AI with things like chat GPT, there's
yeah,
more buzz about AI
yeah,
now, in terms of
yeah.
now that it's more accessible. Do you see that at all in?
There's definitely more conversation around it.
Yeah.
Definitely more conversation. I suppose if you go back like a year ago compared to
Mm,
what it is now, yeah, so much more conversation.
mm,
Just not much action
yeah.
currently.
Well,
Um,
to me, that says all opportunity. That's exciting. Um, so, what are some then? What are the most realistic hurdles that you face right now in bringing some of these changes to your industry? Your biggest barriers that we need to break through with you?
I would say it's probably just down to, I'd say the two things are probably culture and budget.
Hmm.
They're going to be the two things. Um, but again, like we're extremely sort of new to this space, and
Mm,
until we start getting into the realms of it, like we haven't even explored
mm,
sort of what areas we could utilize it and what that may cost. So
mm,
could be sitting here today saying budget's an issue, but it might actually not. I don't know.
yeah.
So they're the conversations that kind of we need to start having. But yeah, I would say the other one is just having that sort of shift in culture and attitude towards
Mm,
change, and also adopting new technology. Because I
mm,
think there's been, I think that if you kind of asked the sort of the generic person walking down the street around AI, that there's been so much chat around it basically replacing humans, and I think that is a lot of people's concern. But I think that's probably painting it with quite a broad brush. So yeah, I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges, I would say.
yeah.
I don't know if you
And
found that as well, but it kind of, I think people think AI, think taking my job.
yeah. It's really funny, because have you heard of the grief curve, the change curve or the grief curve? So I think it's called the Kubler-Ross grief curve. Don't quote me, but it takes you through, when you go into like shock, then denial,
Oh yeah,
then
yeah, yeah,
anger,
yeah,
and then you go into the
yeah,
depression and bargaining and all, and then you
yeah,
come
yeah,
eventually accept it. That's what you go through with every change or every loss.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
what we are experiencing is different people are in different cycles in that curve of understanding, and we call it, you've probably seen before, our digital evolution pillars. So we have four
Yeah.
different pillars. One is called a spry strategy, and that's where we talk about how business leaders, no longer can have, that big 5-10 year plan that they don't adapt, because technology is going to radically change the world that we're in, and that means we need to be a bit more assess, align, act
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
regularly. The other is, an infinite vision. So not just thinking about, the short term cost savings, but the longer term gains that they're looking for the future of their business and what they're trying to achieve. And then the last two are the two that you're talking about in terms of your barriers, which are, one is called a liminal spaces culture, which I'm not sure a lot of people haven't heard of, liminal space. I'm not sure if you have.
No.
No. Well, when we say it, it's kind of fun to us because it's not a concept many knows. It's from like a more anthropological concept, and it basically means that the space you were in before is no longer, and the space you're going to, you don't quite know what it looks like yet. And they often paint the example of like a corridor. So you're like in a, and it's a bit, there's a lot of uncertainty, and
Yeah.
that's what's happening for everyone, right? They're in this
Yeah.
liminal
Yeah.
spaces culture, and that changes what's needed of leaders and businesses and how they help people navigate it. So we do a lot of work with our clients to try to help them, because everyone, and we try to even encourage thinking about like conversations with their team about, making AI a positive thing in their business and how they're doing it, and acknowledging the real concerns that people have. And
Yeah.
then so we do things, for example, at Geeks, we have this program called Geeks Without Borders, and people can come up with change projects and solve challenges with technology. And I know we're a tech company, so we're going to be much less adverse to these kinds of
Yeah.
things than others. But then our team are coming up with ideas of how they can augment themselves with AI and almost create assistants for themselves,
Yeah.
in their own roles. And we try to make it, we're on this journey together. And everyone's going to be, our industries, because we're in tech, we're one of the first to be disrupted.
Yeah.
So we're in a different stage to many others, and I think it's good to talk about these things so people can learn from each other.
Yeah.
And then the fourth pillar is evergreen investment, which is, what you're talking about with budgeting. So the idea that, um, essentially what we aim to do is invest in technologies which, hopefully, for example, this project that we just did with you, that'll start yielding returns in different
Yeah.
ways, and then you can take those returns and put them into your next. And then the more you do, you create this evergreen cycle of growth and investment. And obviously that
Yeah.
does take some courage in some places, and if you want to be even more brave, that means, investing in R&D and D and things
Big
like that.
budgets.
Yeah, exactly. And like, it varies, but all of these things kind of happen together, and that's why it's such a complex change. But if you do what you've done, and that's why I love your example today of problem solution, in the span of weeks you're already a slightly different business
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
what you've done before. And if you keep doing that in the span of a year, it's a huge evolution, isn't it? So I
Yeah.
think it's really, I think your example is really great, and I'm super happy that you came on here to share it with everyone.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the invite.
Mm.
Yeah, no, we're really happy. I can't speak highly enough of Geeks, to be honest. It was the whole process from start to finish was extremely easy, pleasure to deal with, and it was nice to get a project over the line. Because, like I said, we've done solution design before, and then it didn't quite happen, and then yeah, a couple of years down the line, we got a project over the line. So yeah, it was good.
Well, I say the same to you. You're an absolute, um, and I don't say this about everyone, but you've been an absolute pleasure to work with. And I love people that just, own their domain and love what they do and are very clear-minded, in what they
Yeah,
want to achieve. And we're kind of both the as on the tin people, so we went in with the same clarity of mind and
yeah,
simple solution, get it done. So it shows that it works.
yeah. No,
So
definitely appreciate it.
so one last question for you before we wrap up, if you don't mind. So
Hmm.
in your perfect world, and I'm going to paint it, say, let's imagine your industry in 10 years, 15 years. What does that technology powered world look like for you? in the bigger picture?
Left the most difficult question till last.
I know, going out with a bang.
I suppose it would be training, using those technologies to train better, using VR, AR, metaverse, etc., for training purposes. I think that would be, if we could get to that point, I think that would be amazing, because we'd have much better skilled engineers, I think, coming straight out of college.
Do you think by then they would be like have robot assistants helping them with jobs?
It's one of those, you don't want to go out on a limb and say no, because who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
I think the way how quickly things are moving, I just don't think you can put a timescale on anything really. You just don't really know. I don't think it's impossible, but I think it's probably a long way off. But I wouldn't say it's impossible. And yeah, I think making life easier from an administration purpose. So automating where possible, and just making life easier for people, from an administration perspective, because some of it's so repetitive and tedious. So I think if we could get to a point where that side of the business is as automated and as running efficiently as possible, that'd be amazing.
Well, I definitely know you can, so I'm excited to see the journey. Thank you so much for joining us in the Innovation Room.
Thank you.
And hopefully you'll join us again.
Definitely.
Thanks for your time, Rob.
Thanks, Lindsay.